Praise the Lord, everybody, and welcome to Why We Hate Church Folk. Why We Hate Church Folk is a platform that asks the questions without any of the judgment.
I am your church administrator, Wood, aka Wood L. Jenkins if you're hood, and Graham Wellington III if you're corporate. Folks, is a platform we ask a whole lot of questions and we might stumble upon an answer here and there. Today we are talking with Blair, who on the is professionally known on the Instagram as Talk Purity to me. Hi Blair, how are you today?
I'm good. How are y'all?
We are good and wonderful.
Excellent.
We are good and wonderful. So I reached out to Blair and a lot of other deconstruction. Because for some reason I thought higher of myself than I ought and didn't realize that this community was so huge of deconstruction people. And so this season we have decided to talk to some people that are going through the same journey we are. And maybe even have some answers to those questions we asked. So Blair is going to tell us a little bit about herself. So Blair, tell us a little bit about your platform, what you do, and then we'll get into a little bit of the question and answer session.
Yeah, I have been running this account, Talk Purity to Me, for a little over 2 years. And
Nice.
it really just started as a way to open up a conversation about purity culture and how it negatively affects people.
Hmm.
Because I think there's the church taboo about around sex and everything like that. And then in general, in American culture, sex is also taboo.
Hmm.
People are kind of afraid to talk about it. So there's just a lot working against people who want to kind of unravel those ideas and deconstruct those ideas. And so to even have a place to like open it up was, I thought was like really timely and important. So I was just like, I don't see a lot specifically about what I want to talk about. So I guess I'll be the one to start something.
So tell me what exactly you say you don't find a lot of people talking specifically about what you want to talk about. What is that specifically that you hope to convey to people?
Yeah, I just really wanted people to know that what we went through in purity culture and all these ideas, um, you know, you're not crazy if it still is affecting you, even in your adult life. Like, there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with purity culture, and like it's okay to acknowledge that like it hurt you, and also there's hope to, you know, learn better, better information and just be able to heal past that. So
So if you don't mind, how do you define purity culture? Like I want to make sure for
yeah,
context purposes.
yeah. So the way that I really think about it, obviously, again in the context of how I learned it, how I grew up, um, is really just it's like a set of ideas about um, a lot of like self worth being attached to virginity, especially before marriage. Um, a lot of it goes into even like modesty culture. There's a lot of this is kind of a controversial one. Soul ties is all a part of that. A lot
Mhm.
of people have some interesting ideas about soul ties, and those are still like, it sounds silly to some of us, but like a lot of people really believe that
Mhm.
having sex is like giving pieces of yourself away and like a lot
Mhm.
of like things like that. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like a broad, really
Mhm.
just basically, if you have sex before marriage, you're not worth anything.
Gotcha. So, you grew up. So, what denomination did you grow up, or did you grow up non-denominational?
I was Southern Baptist for sure, and pretty
Hmm.
much like always Southern Baptist,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
towards, high school, college, I got a little charismatic in there.
Hmm.
So
That
yeah, that
that
was that's
that
kind of my
sounds
journey.
that mirrors my journey. Southern Baptist, yeah, charismatic, yeah. Um, so you were going through this, you growing up Southern Baptist, and I can relate. It's all like even thinking about sex is going to hell and all that kind of stuff. So, when you're going through this, what can you tell me a story like of when um you found yourself like this purity culture being ingrained in you? Like, is there like any specific instance where you're like, oh my God, this is, I'm going to hell and this is terrible and I c-
Well, yeah. So, I mean, there's a few stories of like times where I can look back and say, oh, this is like definitely a big manifestation of how all these ideas kind of were like ingrained in me and,
Mhm,
produced some pretty negative results. Like,
mhm.
I remember the first time I ever just holding hands with a guy, that was it. I literally had my first panic attack because I was so afraid that I had like cheated on my future husband. Because
Wow.
that's like how I was taught about it. And I
Mhm.
literally, like, it was one of the worst experiences like I've ever had. And so that's kind of like an example there.
Did y'all do the rings and all of that? Mm.
I did have a purity ring. Yeah, I still have
Oh, oh,
it.
wow. So you go through, you're growing up, when did it change? Like, when did you have a moment where you're like, this ain't it? I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, probably kind of towards the end of college, or
Hmm.
I may have already graduated from college at this point,
Hmm.
somewhere around there.
Hmm.
Um, I just remember like I was making out with the guy, and um, I knew that like basically that was all it was, and then I was so panicked that I could like somehow possibly be pregnant that I literally bought plan B and I took plan B. And like I know that's
Wow.
like I'm not it sounds
No,
wild,
I get it. I get it.
but
No,
You are
yeah.
not alone.
I know when I posted that on my Instagram. I
Hmm.
posted that story because I was
Hmm.
like, you know what? Like I can kind of laugh at it now because it is so ridiculous that like I was taught
Hmm.
something that made me feel that way. And so many people were in my DMs saying, I didn't want to comment this, but I did the exact same thing. Like
Mm,
so many. And I was like, yeah, that's like why I say stuff like this because it's like I know that so many people have been through similar things.
yeah.
But
So
that
how?
was really like a like
Yeah,
that's
the light bulb moment.
wild.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about it that what about your journey made you say, I know you said you had this moment where you took this plan B and you're like, I didn't even sleep with anybody, but somehow I had to take plan B. But what was the moment where you said, no, sex is okay. I'm this is okay. What when did that moment come? And how did you come to that reconciliation?
So I think there's like, for me, it was always a big disconnect. Like mentally, I could get there. I could be like,
Mm,
yes, sex is okay. Like,
mhm,
I am okay with this.
mhm,
I don't need these ideas anymore. I don't believe this anymore. But
mhm,
there's a big difference between translating like what you know in your mind to like what you're actually like emotionally and physically like ready to
mhm,
live out.
mhm,
And I think the first one happened a long time before the second one, it
mhm,
was not like a quick process for me. But
mhm,
it mainly was just like slowly getting like healing, getting more comfortable with the idea because I believed it, but I couldn't like live it yet because I was
mhm,
just still working through all the trauma
mhm,
of everything that I'd been through.
mhm, mhm,
I think it's so interesting. This is more like commentary than it is a question. Um, the work that it takes to not be transphobic is hard,
mhm,
but not being transphobic is easy. And
mm,
it's funny how it's very easy to like indoctrinate us about purity and about modesty,
mhm,
but for whatever reason it's it's something that you end up having like I don't have to heal from using the same language that people used to use back in the day and like gay slurs.
mhm,
I don't have to heal from that.
mhm,
There's work to do to like stay out of that place, but it's just wild to me how damaging this dogma is that's supposed to be so affirming and uplifting and you're pure and you're going to give yourself to your husband you know, and then everything's gonna be great. And I don't understand how it lasts, because that's not how any of this works. Um, that just blows me.
Mm. And not in a good way. Um, so Blair, tell me, so you talk about, understanding it and living it are two different things.
Yeah.
Like Bijou was saying, it's like I know it's okay to have sex, but walking over there is kind of like, I know it's over there, but I still got to walk over there. But is there something that is this still a walk for you every day? Like, is this something that you still struggle with? Like, do you have moments? I'm trying not to get into your personal business, but I know you're like, I'm okay with this. So, like, if you have sex now, does it make you feel like, do you ever have those moments where you're like, shit, I shouldn't have done that? Like, just reminiscing.
I think it's more I think it's like way less conscious than that. Like
Okay.
I think it's just still there's like parts of me that like I may not even have like uncovered yet that
Mm-hmm.
there of course like things come up,
Mm-hmm.
like um because indoctrination is
Mm-hmm.
in my brain. Like
Right.
that's how my brain was built.
Mm-hmm.
So getting out of that is a really long process
Mm-hmm.
and I'll probably be working on it for like a very long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I definitely think there's like parts of me that still has like fear or like apprehension or yeah, just like anxiety about it sometimes, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
just work all the work I do like outside of those contexts to feel like, I'm in control of my body and like I get to like choose what I want. It
Mm-hmm.
like really translates to other, parts of my life like sex and things like that. So,
Gotcha. When you so when you're your platform is about getting away from purity culture, like basically saying it's okay to have sex, it's okay to where do you find yourself in this? So there's I feel like people go into these extremes, right? They're either no sex or I'm out here, I'm living my best life, I'm gonna sleep with whoever, whatever, however I want. Like, do you
yeah.
find yourself which extreme? I mean, obviously you don't find yourself on a purity culture extreme, but do you find yourself at that extreme, or are you more like, I just want you to have the choice to do whatever you want?
Yeah, that's more where I feel like I fall is I always talk about like I want people to have the sex life that they want to have. And if that
Hmm.
means celibacy, if that means abstinence, whatever, if that's your choice, like I am happy for you and like I affirm you and I think that's great. And if you want to be out there like doing your thing, also great. Be safe and just like enjoy yourself, you
Hmm.
know? So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
feel like I want people to feel like people who did grow up in purity culture who want to now explore a healthy sex life. I think education is super important and many of us didn't get that. So like I'm very pro sex education for everyone, but then, everybody gets to choose what
Hmm.
is right for them and like I honor that.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that they pro ho, and I it's always funny to me because I'm like when I first heard that term pro ho, I was like, oh, that was my purity culture coming, like, oh, and then I thought about it and I'm like, I mean, I guess I'm pro ho too. Like, doing whatever you want to do is if you want to be pro ho,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but with that being said, I think about we were talking earlier about before we got on, we were talking about soul ties, and so you say you're telling people do whatever you want to do if that's cool with you. So you say you don't believe in soul ties. Is that correct? Okay.
Right.
Okay. So now, and I'm of the same mindset, but do you find that sometimes, so there's a sign, supposedly there's scientific evidence that when you sleep with people there's chemical reactions that happen in your brain that make you feel more connected to people. um do you feel
That is
like,
true.
okay,
Yeah.
and so do you feel like there is something to be said for people not sleeping with a lot of people because they don't want to have those bonds to people that aren't good for them, or are you still more like, do you, um, or whatever?
Well, certainly, I don't think people should sleep with people who they think are not going to be a good match for them or like a
Mhm,
good experience. But if you're only saying no to something that you really want, that's like going to be, a consensual experience because you're afraid of some like supernatural
mhm,
connection that you might build with someone, I would
mhm,
say I encourage you to unpack that because I don't think that's real. I think it's scare tactics, and I think
yeah.
what we're really afraid of doing is talking about emotional connection and unpacking
Mhm,
that sometimes like we may be hurt or we might, if the connection level is not like balanced, like if you like someone else way more than they like you
mhm,
might get hurt. And I think that's what people are afraid of, and
mhm,
so they have to have this like supernatural thing that
mhm.
is the reason they're hurt and not because they just have emotions and they're an emotional person and they don't want to deal with it.
No.
Yeah, that's my comment, that I feel like soul ties are one of the most inventive, double-edged, self-hatred swords because, people tell you, well, if you give yourself away too much, you're gonna have these bonds that you can't break.
Mhm,
And none of that ever invites you to go inside and set different expectations.
mhm,
My testimony is that the first time that I had sex, my expectation is that we're getting married to someone who hand I had never held. So, but in my mind, immediately, like the next day, I was like, oh, because I'm about to be a wife. I mean, and that was on no one's radar but mine. So I could say that it's a soul tie. But a lot of the disappointment that I felt after that engagement, situationship,
mhm.
was because of my own expectations that are built by purity culture that says once you open up the pocketbook, somebody's going to take responsibility for you. And that's a lie, church.
That is a lot.
That's a lie.
Um, the purity culture as we see it now. So there's a time in human history where men, they would have you would have sex with a woman, and like Bijou was saying, now I'm responsible for you because other than that, you'd be in the wilderness and something could kill you. Do you feel like today's purity culture is bred from that, or do you think that it's more just about control? Like, do you think that sometimes passed down, or I'm gonna be honest with you, I believe that it's just about control. But I just want to
Mhm.
make, I just want to ask. I'm
Yeah. No, you're
playing
fine.
advocate. Yeah.
I mean, I do think it's about control,
Mhm,
and I kind of jokingly say this, but I'm also not joking completely. Like
mhm,
I say the evangelical church is a sex cult because of the way that it controls behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions around sex. Like
mhm.
it checks all the boxes of like being a cult in even in this very specific way.
Yeah.
So I do believe that it is all about control.
Mhm,
Um and those of us who were indoctrinated into purity culture will
mhm,
then indoctrinate others. So it's like we become the disciples of this type of
mhm.
thinking. Yeah, and then we just continue it. We continue to indoctrinate ourselves even when we think things are weird. We're just like, no, you just got to go with it, and then
Yeah.
we do that to other people. So
I think about even America, the current America when it was colonized, like even the first people that come in are Puritans, right? Like they were so radical they got kicked out of England for their that puritanical view of social life, sex, and all that. And I think about how different like European countries are to us. Like is this they don't do violence like we do, but they are much more open to the natural parts of sex. And I find that I don't know if there's some causation there, but the correlation between
yeah,
people being really violent and and not wanting to have a lot of
Oh,
sex, and
okay.
over there the other way around. Because I'm like, I feel like if you doing enough sex, I'm not really trying to go fight. Like I really want to. I just want to sleep it off now.
Shh, I
Uh,
love you.
But with that being said, I wanted to say something to you. You did something the other day that I thought was really cool. Like I think you posted about you like I just had sex or something like that. Was that you? I'm sorry. Maybe not.
Mm-mm.
Okay, sorry. I'm putting
Yes, it
something on.
is.
I apologize. It was
I think
somebody.
I think
In,
I saw that post though. So you're not making it up. I
okay.
saw that post.
Okay. Well, I just thought it was funny. Like somebody literally posted like I just had sex, and it was like the freeing, you know.
Mhm.
So asking that to say, are you the type of person like? Uh, do you go around like talking about, yeah, I do this? Like, is it more like that? Let me let you know what I'm doing, or is it more just like it's okay to be you? Like, what is your? Because some people feel
Yeah.
like the need to let you know because they feel like if I need to shock and awe because I need to shake you out of this indoctrination.
Mm. Or even just the liberation in saying it out loud. I think like that's really important
Yeah.
to a lot of people. And then I
Yeah,
think for other
Totally.
people, it's more important to just walk away from something that doesn't make any sense at all.
right.
So like on
Yeah.
that spectrum of this makes absolutely no sense and get buck, I'm doing it, like where do you say you fall?
I would say it I typically don't like announce things like that about my own personal life. And part of that is, I want to protect like my partner's privacy.
Hmm.
They didn't ask to be a part of this platform, so I feel like a certain level of just like protection over them and
Mm-hmm.
like
Hmm. Hmm.
wanting our life to be ours because
Hmm.
the internet and just people in general, if you put any part of your life out there, they want it
Brutal.
all. And like I say no to that. Like I don't put everything about myself out there. But you know what? If people like I'm not offended by it. If
Hmm.
people want to like share that, I'm like go off. Like I love it. Do you? I don't like I think it's great if people feel
Come
comfortable
here.
and like we each
I
Sorry.
loved it. But
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, this is fine.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no,
Yeah.
I felt like the Brady Bunch.
I'm good either way. I just
Yeah.
was like it was just there.
Like, whoa, what is going on here? Sorry. Please
No, but
continue. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, I'm just like again, it's like what's right for me and what is like true and in alignment with like what I want for my life might not be the same thing for somebody else. And if that is the case, then I say go for it. Like I have no like I don't think one is better than the other. I just think like everybody gets
Mhm,
to do what they want.
mhm,
So I have a question. For me, my church experience is very, very different than, y'all's Southern Baptist that, got charismatic. My stuff is much more like almost frou-frou, like it's way more frou-frou. And so I don't have some of the same bands that other people I meet who believe similarly to me have. But I do understand that, the word religion comes from the root word to regulate. And I often wonder, as we move forward, and I'm being a little bit presumptuous here because I'm making the assumption that you're still a Christian, which may be wrong. Um, but how so we know that we don't want to be controlled, and we know that we want to see room made for personal agency in faith spaces. But do you have, and you're not responsible for the answers because you didn't start the fire, but do you have like a dream direction that this thing can go, or doesn't even make sense? Is this the kind of system that needs to be completely dragged to the ground, destroyed, and risen again?
Well, I'm actually not a Christian anymore, but I do have a lot of Christians in my life, Christians who I love and care for. And just in general, I want to see Christianity be a safer place for people. So, um, if I didn't think that maybe there was a possibility of change, I wouldn't be doing this.
mhm,
And, I just, I do think that purity culture specifically some days you know I do think we just got to go back to the drawing board. Like I think it's just kind of so far gone.
mhm,
And you know it seeks to control people so much that I just don't see any room for it to be like I don't think we should just control people's sex lives less. Like I just think we shouldn't try to control them at all.
Hard
Yeah,
agree.
So,
yeah,
Retweet.
yeah. The thing about it is, none of this is based in spiritual stuff. It's just this. I mean, it's obviously like you guys, like you ladies said earlier. It's about controlling a person's body. If I can, and I, for the life of me though, I don't understand why. Like that's the big this like I don't know if you have an answer for that. Like is there a why that someone would say I don't want you to sleep with someone, or I want to make sure that you like why do I feel the need to regulate who you sleep with and making sure that you have um not have sex before marriage and all that. Um I have suspicions, but I wanted to hear what your thoughts are as women, because I know male ego, obviously, but I
I
just
got one. I'm ready.
go
I'm
ahead.
gonna let Blair go first.
Okay.
oh my gosh. Well, I think a lot of it could just go back to like ideas about supremacy of thought. Like people said one time, they were like, I know what's best, and
Hmm.
this is what this book is saying. And like, of course, I have the right interpretation of it. And so all y'all need to like follow suit. And this is what this book said. So I think it's just a really like another form of supremacist thinking. Like one day someone was like, yeah, I know like what we actually need to be doing. And like, you know, that I think that just kind of that's my theory.
Hmm. Bijou.
Mine is that, because it's been going on for centuries now, I think women are really easy to commodify, up there
Mm,
with animals. I
mm,
think it's strange that humankind for so long has been procreating with each other. Men
mhm.
and women have had sex with each other to create
Mm.
children, but somehow dogs are man's best friend. I, I
Yeah.
just think that women are have been in times past easy to commodify. I think World War II is a really great example. Like women are not allowed to
Mhm.
work, and then all the men have gone to war, and now it's Rosie the Riveter. And as soon as the men come back, it's go home and put an apron on, girl. We don't need you here anymore. And then we
Mm,
spend a few more decades where your mama didn't know how to type, and that's why she couldn't leave your daddy while he was beating her up and every other Jane down the block, right?
mhm,
So like
mhm,
it's a system that I think was easy to perpetuate because you make situations where men can amass power. I'm not even going to say wealth. Men can amass power, and women should be looked down upon for amassing power
mhm,
unless they come with the permission of men. And I just think, and maybe it's like survival of the fittest of oppression systems. Like it worked for 30 years and then it worked for 300 more.
mhm.
And then this is, where we're at now.
So I found myself thinking like, um, maybe it's something more to it than that, because obviously men end up having to deal with purity culture too. Like we're told the same thing. But I find myself thinking that a lot of times people, it's a way to obviously control people, right? But um, I think it's an easy way to control women, right? And men, but also give men the scapegoat, right? Because it's always a woman's fault that led me into temptation. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Since Genesis.
so I think I mean, it's obviously a way of control, but I think it's an easy way to create social hierarchy, right? Like everybody stay pure, and then if I mess up, it's the woman's fault. You know what I mean? Like it's easy way to make women a scapegoat, and I think that's pretty crappy, but
But it's also biblically sound. Um, so, Blair, another question. So, a lot of times when we have conversations around purity culture, it's
Mhm,
extremely heteronormative.
mhm,
And I'm not in the purity space on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Um, talk if you can, if you feel comfortable, if you feel like it's your, niche. That's how you say that word, right? Niche. Google it.
one of them, one
Yeah.
of
One of
them.
them. I
Mhm,
was saying it in French.
mhm,
Um, talk to me about non-heteronormative purity culture? Like, what does that look like when you're out in these purity streets?
Yeah. I've heard like a variety of people's experiences, so I'll just kind of like relay what I've had people share with me. Like, one thing that I think is interesting is I've had like a lot of women um, tell me that they thought they were just amazing and so pure and like never felt tempted and all of this stuff. And they just thought they were so good at purity culture, like they won purity culture. And then they realized they were gay and they were never
Mm.
tempted by like who they thought they should be tempted by. So then they were just like, oh, I'm good. Like, I'm just super holy. And turns out like that was kind of like they look back on it now and say like, no, I wasn't like super holy. I just wasn't attracted to men. And
Mhm.
I think that's super interesting. They're not even taught about like desires or like they completely write off their own natural desires because of the ideas of purity culture, the heteronormativity.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's like one interesting take that I've heard.
Mhm.
And also, obviously, just, you know, many people realize that they are gay or trans at a young age. And then you go to church, and I don't know about y'all's churches, but my pastor would scream about homosexuals till he was red in the face, you know? And
Mhm.
so it's like
Mhm.
you realize you're gay and then you go to church and you're really scared because you're 5 years old or whatever. And like the preacher is screaming about how all gay people are going to hell. And I mean, then there's like conversion therapy, which is like
Mhm.
obviously not therapy for anyone who's not familiar with the term. It is not therapy.
It is not.
Um,
Now we've
and
had some people on the show before that have gone through conversion
Conversion
therapy.
trauma.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
yeah.
going to
Let's
start
not call.
calling it.
Yeah, let's not
yes,
call it. Yeah.
it is not therapy. That
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that term way better. But yeah, and so you just hear like, I mean, the experiences I've heard from people going through those trauma programs essentially are they're just heartbreaking.
And
And
Mhm.
abhorrent. And it goes back to your cult point, to be
Mhm.
mhm,
honest, because it'd be one thing if it was, 1970s electroshock and being doused with cold water, but the stories that we've heard are about indoctrination, about, I mean, it gives heavy Jim Jones vibes.
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And it's
Mhm.
like it's really interesting to think about it because I mean, literally turn on any cult documentary. Just pick
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
Eventually, it always comes back to sex and
Yep.
controlling sex and the
Yep.
cult leader
Every time.
saying who can have sex with who and when and like
And it's usually everyone can have sex with
And
him and not
yes,
each
I can have sex with
yes,
other.
everyone, which is
yes,
also a lot, and I'm not gonna, it's not every church, but it's a lot of churches.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a lot of churches. Even, um, we posted a meme to our account the other day about, places where people are just having sex with each other a lot. And I
Mhm.
didn't comment because it's my account, but I was thinking call centers and churches. Like,
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
it's true.
I
so,
think.
And
Yeah.
then you get done and then you pray that you'll never be tempted again.
and then you go back to their house after service.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yep.
I think also that the funny thing about, because most people have sex behind closed doors, it's an easy way to pretend like you're being holy when you don't. It's very performative, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, unless a baby show up or you get a disease, I could have spent my whole life not sleeping with anybody. I can tell you all the time I don't sleep with anybody, but and then as long as I don't show up with a baby or disease, you'd never know.
I know.
But also, and I thought it was funny because I think it's going back to what I was saying about um men. I think a lot of men enjoy the ideal of purity culture because it's this ego thing, right? Like like there's I've had this conversation before. Like so many people being men like to ask, what's your number? How many partners you have because of this ego thing, and I need to, and you need to
4,000.
be. And but right,
Thank
because it's
you.
like that they put some type of value on, they put value on how many people have slept with you, and but it's kind of like, okay, like I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten, and also I've gotten to an age where I'm like, if if I ain't married by now, eh, I've been doing some sex, so I can't really judge anybody on what they do. Not that I ever could, but definitely not now. So I just think there's this disconnect where people really feel this, well, not disconnect, but this thing where people, men, really need to feel like I was the only one, right? Because I have some special place
Hmm.
in your heart, and if I teach people to be pure, you know.
But it doesn't have to be. And anybody who heard me talk about this stuff more than 3 times knows that I'm always going for agency. For
Hmm.
I want to teach people agency over your body. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you think you're interested in? What don't you think you're interested in?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Because you can be special to me and not be the only one. Now I am an Aquarius, and I mean that's just like that's my default setting.
Hmm.
Baby, you the baddest because I'm gonna find a badder one after we break up. But like it is what it is. This is so I used to have a husband, and he kept himself pure until marriage. We thank God.
Oh,
And yep. And so the
good to
issue that
know.
we ran into as a married couple, as a married Christian couple of youth pastors, is that we were married and we had this desire sexually that was now unlocked, and we had absolutely no idea what to do with it. We did not know who to talk to. We did not know how to discover our own desire and pleasure. And to me, I mean, it's funny in hindsight, but there is no space for you to talk about sex as a married person. There is no literature, not anything that's actually going to be of any help. Because
Hmm.
anyway, specifically, if you actually like give in to your sex drive now that you're married,
Hmm.
I think it's absurd.
Hmm.
Hmm. Very.
And I have talked to so many people who said, me and my spouse, we did everything right. We stayed pure. We did everything we were supposed to, and we have never been able to have sex. Or, I realized I'm asexual, or, there wasn't that desire there, or it was different, than my partner, whatever. Like, it's heartbreaking. And then, like
Hmm.
you said, you're always told that that pleasure or that desire or whatever, it's just going to be unlocked, right? And so then if it's not, there's something wrong with you.
Hmm.
And like, then you're just like in a bind because you're like, you think something's wrong with you, you have no resources, you have no community support, you don't know what to do. And that is the
Hmm.
story of so many people.
Hmm.
And you've been avoiding sex your entire life. And I was abstinent for quite some time. I mean, the better part of a decade, and I don't mean 6 years. I was abstinent for 8 years, and I avoided sex harder than anything else in this life. I did not watch people kiss on television. I did not listen to R&B music, and that's what it took for me to lose all sexual desire. Um, that was not a switch that was just immediately flipped the day that I said I do. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, I'm gonna keep it a buck because we're talking about purity culture. I kissed my ex-husband for the first time at the altar. I mean, there was no context for what to do as a married couple, and I'm just wondering why nobody at Church Incorporated thought of that. What are y'all going to do now? Like, we go to so many marriage ministry meetings, but none of them are about doggy style or oral sex. And if they are, and I wish I was making this up, went to a conference, you shouldn't be having sex in the form of an animal. Putting your mouth on somebody's genitals is like hooking your mouth up to a sewer pipe and sucking from it. Have y'all read the
Oh
Song of
my
Solomon?
God.
Because it's in the book.
I couldn't. I can't. I won't. So
Oh,
I in my own life, I struggled with the purity culture thing for a long time, and I remember I would go through bouts of sleeping with people and then stopping. And I think the biggest thing for me as a male, I think that causes issue for men in purity culture is we don't have healthy outlets for sex, and it causes men to do very stupid and sometimes violent things, right?
yeah.
And then that's not an excuse. You still shouldn't be doing
Mm-hmm.
rapey things if no matter what. But I think it would be a much easier world if you would say, hey, you shouldn't rape, and if you want to have sex, just ask. You might be surprised. She might say yes. Wear a condom. I just think purity culture puts us in a position where men approach sex very cavemanish
Mm-hmm.
instead of like what I saw what you posted, even with their partner. Hey, do you want to sleep together tonight? And be okay with if she says no, or be very happy when she says yes, vice versa. But I think I came into a world where I wasn't taught those type of things. I'm learning how to engage with women in the club for the first time. You know what I mean? Or
Mm-hmm.
at school dance, or these things where like all I know is I've been told I can't have sex. I decide I'm gonna have sex, and I'm horny, and I don't know how to approach this. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I mean, teaching men
Mhm,
that they literally can't control their own sexual urges, that
mhm.
it's just a flip in their brain that's, switched at the sight of a spaghetti strap and they just can't like control themselves. Like, how is
Right.
that setting that
Yeah.
young man up for success, or teaching him that he, has agency and like can, has
Mhm.
worth and like should respect himself enough to like control those
Yeah.
desires when he needs to.
Yeah, and it's funny because y'all are told that y'all should control yours. That's interesting.
Mhm.
No, and well, hide it under a bushel, bury it deep down under the ground,
Hmm.
and don't ever let anybody, because this is actually a segue into something that I wanted to talk about modesty.
Hmm.
Don't ever don't ever find yourself in a position where you have caused someone else to stray, because
Hmm.
it is your job as a woman to make sure that men never have any sexual or animalistic desires to anyone but the wife of their youth.
Oh boy.
And
Hmm.
if I hadn't run into this situation 3 weeks ago,
Hmm.
I felt I got to a point in my life,
Hmm.
because I was out of church, that I felt very removed from modesty culture. And it
Hmm.
hasn't been a month since I was admonished about not wearing long jackets to service.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not gonna lie, it was
Oh my god.
hurtful. I
Yeah.
because I know how I feel about this. We've talked about it on the show. I've been deconstructing my faith for years
Hmm.
now, and I
Hmm.
knew exactly how I felt about it. And it's still, I mean, I was in a tizzy.
Hmm.
I was
That's awful.
very emotional at this big age, when I would have thought that I'd be past that by now, and I would have thought that people were past that by now. Um, so Blair, I will hand it over to you. Modesty culture, right?
Hmm.
Yep. It's no, it's just like so it's just honestly so sad how we just teach people that there's something wrong with your body at such a young age. Telling the little girl that she can't, run around on the playground because she's got a dress on, and if her
Hmm.
dress came up, that would, some tempt 40-year-old men who are watching her in the playground. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm like, do, okay, so men are somehow always in control of like their thoughts and emotions and everything, unless there are women present and they are wearing clothes that show they have a body. Like, it's
You know, it's crazy. The thing about
You're upset.
the purity culture thing that makes me really upset is like growing up, it made me really. it made me really think that women didn't like sex. Like I had to convince her to have sex with me. Like it wasn't like because y'all weren't supposed to like sex. Like you're supposed to stay until we're married. You're not supposed, and even then, you're not supposed to actually desire it. It's just to make a baby. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about my pleasure. You know what I mean? And so, and going back to what I was saying earlier, it's how you approach how it would approach people, right? Because I'm approaching you not as a sexual being that likes sex, that, you might actually enjoy this with me. It was, let me convince you to let me put my penis in you because somehow, and I don't know why I never connected it until I was an adult. Like, that doesn't make sense. But, here we are. Um, but I just, those are some of the other evils I find with purity culture is just like how much it, it taints the way that we just talk to each other and how we even arrive at how we see each other, right? Like we don't
Mm-hmm.
see each other as sexual beings. I feel like it puts us in a situation where men have to see women as people that aren't sexual beings, and unfortunately, because shit happens, I feel like women have to be on guard around men a lot because we haven't been taught to let people have agency and just understand we're all sexual beings and we can just enjoy each other with consent.
And the
So,
Mm-hmm.
flip side of it is you do everything you're supposed to do. You go to the marriage classes, you woman thou art loosed, and
mhm,
promise rings and all of that stuff. You
mhm,
kiss dating goodbye, you do all that stuff. You get
mhm,
married, you discover because you
mhm,
didn't know before, you've been dodging sex your entire
mhm,
life. And
mhm,
as a woman, you discover that you have what might be considered a moderate or high level of sexual desire, and that can be really unattractive to your Christian husband. And I'm
mhm,
of course I'm doing this in a heteronormative way. And I'm not equipped to talk about the stigma that comes, from being same gender loving or being trans or anywhere else on the spectrum besides straight.
mhm,
But I can talk about straight, pure Christian marriage. And
mhm,
it's pure trash because even though you're married, and I heard this rhetoric so many times in the marriage meeting that men, and I'm using the terminology that I had at the time. If
mhm,
y'all want to cancel me temporarily for this in 2056, I get it. But you
mhm,
want to slut out sluts and you don't want your wife to be a slut. When you get married, you put your slutting ways behind you, but you definitely don't want to come home to a slut.
mhm,
But if you do marry a woman who's discovered sexual desire, which is abnormal that she's not supposed to have, even though she's married now, because how would you know? Like, who told you
mhm,
that your wife might be a minx? And it's a problem. And once again, I think purity culture is such a horribly beautiful double-edged sword because it messes it up for everybody, whether you're asexual or overly sexual. um it's bad. It's always bad.
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
Yeah, I mean, having one standard that, is the only parameter that we're allowed to be a sexual being in, on these terms, of course, it's going to exclude so many people. And, all of those people are going to feel like they're just, messed up, they're broken or something.
mhm, mhm. Well, Bijou, did you have any other questions
No
before?
other questions. No other questions.
Well, I wanted to see if we could get a fire round in real quick. Are
Pew
you?
pew pew pew.
I'm gonna change it up a little bit because since Blair has told us she's not a Christian, I don't wanna ask that one question. But
Okay.
I do. But since you were a churchgoer at one time, I will.
Yeah, it works.
It
That one
still
Okay.
works.
does.
So we'll work with that. So, favorite thing about church?
Potlucks.
Nah, like it.
uh,
Um, thing you don't, least favorite thing about church? I'm gonna go with purity culture, maybe.
that would be up there. Yeah. Also church camp.
Church camp. Okay, okay.
Never been.
If you could have dinner with anyone from the Bible, who would it be and why?
God for sure.
Hmm. Okay.
No one
I've
has ever said
no
that.
one's ever said that. And why would it be God? I'm
We got some shit to figure out.
FaceTime
like,
me.
hey, bro. All right. I'm like. Hopefully, I don't turn into a pillar of salt or some
I'll
stuff.
close my eyes.
Like, what is he eating? um, if you if you could practice any religion at this point, and you may already do practice a different religion, what would it be?
I am not religious,
Mhm.
and if I could just pick anyone, um, gosh, I feel like that's hard because I'm so happy without it.
And
That tracks.
it may be nothing. That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably nothing. Maybe Judaism. I don't know. It's got fun holidays, and
There you go. There you
it's a
go.
beautiful religion. I mean, no disrespect.
No,
Y'all seem chill. So,
That's
fair enough.
fair.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, any advice you would give to someone coming out of purity culture that is trying to escape the web that it is weaved?
yeah, I would just say it's never too late to, grow into the fullness of like your own sexual desire, no matter what age you are. And I mean that, like, it's never too late. So
Mm,
whether you're 16 or 26 or 56, like,
mhm.
it's not too late for you to enjoy being a sexual being in whatever way is right for you.
Love it. I love it.
Retweet.
If so with all that being said, we want to thank you so much for coming today, Blair.
Yes.
How can people find you? Plug your pluggables. Tell everybody how to give you some money and show you some love.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I'm on Instagram, of course, at Talk Purity to Me.
That's down there.
I Yes, and I have in my link tree links to merch, links to buy me a coffee. It's like a little way you can kind of like give me a virtual tip.
Mm, I like it.
So I have that. I'm on Instagram, like I said, and also TikTok and
Mhm,
Twitter at the same
mhm,
handle on all
mhm,
platforms.
mhm.
Yes. So,
We weren't that lucky, but go ahead.
oh no. Um, Yeah, I pretty much when I first started, I tried to like just grab everything, grab
Mm-hmm.
all the handles because I was like, I I like this one.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, yes, that's where you can find me.
Dope.
Nice. Nice. So we weren't that lucky, but you can find us at Why We Hate Church Folk on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and there's another one, and TikTok, and then everywhere else you can find us at Hate Church Folk because we only have 13 characters, but that's
13
everywhere.
characters.
And then if you want to support us, we have a Patreon at Why We Hate Church Folk.
Woohoo.
Blair, any parting words?
No, just thanks so much for having me. This was really awesome. I hope to do this again in the future. This was really
Let's do
fun.
it.
Same.
Let's do it. We
I
should
feel
have
so
a
lucky to be able to talk to people who I love to double tap on Instagram on
Oh,
the show.
I'm about to
that's
be
so
petty, and
thank
I'm
you.
gonna just say this, and then we can go. We should have a retreat. All right. With that being said, may the Lord watch
Between me and thee,
while we're absent.
one from another.
In Jesus' name,
Amen.
Amen.
And for those of you who want to follow us on social media, you can find us on the Facebooks, the Instagram, YouTube, and Medium at We Hate Church Folk, and on Twitter at Hate Church Folk, because we can only have 13 characters.